For tonight's question time, we're asking a specially convened panel and audience about the challenges of growing up in the 21st century and what it means for all of us. Roughly half our audience is from that very generation, under 30 or mostly Gen Z. The rest, just a little bit older, but like every other week, they reflect the range of political views across the country. Welcome to Question Time, the next generation, from Greenford in West London. Katharine Birbalsingh, an advocate of old-fashioned values and the founder and headmistress of the Michaela Free School, which is just 5 miles up the road. She's become so renowned for her commitment to knowledge-based learning and strong discipline, she's been dubbed the country's strictest headmistress. Jack Thorne is an award-winning playwright and screenwriter. Most recently, he co-wrote the Netflix hit Adolescence, which has been watched by tens of millions around the world. It also provoked a national debate on the dark online habits consuming some teenage boys and violence against women and girls. Tom Simons, otherwise known as TommyInnit, is a YouTuber, comedian and author of 2 books. He started off playing Minecraft in his bedroom and now has over 50 million followers online all over the world. Hopefully, they're all watching tonight. And he's just finished a global stand-up tour, all that at the age of just 21. Now, I'm afraid we can't quite say that Peter Kyle is from Gen Z, but he is from the government, and as Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology, is responsible for some of the things we'll be discussing tonight, the regulation of AI and social media. And the Conservative peer, Lord Willetts, was once nicknamed Two Brains because he was considered so intelligent. We presume he still is. He was Universities Minister under David Cameron and has written several books, including The Pinch, How Baby Boomers Took Their Children's Future and Why They Should Give It Back. Nearly 1 million under-18s were referred to mental health services last year. The rate of self-harm is going through the roof. And then factor in the cost of everything going up. AI, social media with mobile phones, the problems are clear. But average earnings are actually up for the most part. There's greater acceptance of difference. It's less cigarettes and alcohol, more yoga and oat lattes, as Gen Z is physically healthier than any before. And social media and AI is unlocking levels of instant knowledge and entertainment us Gen Xers and Boomers could only dream of. But still, there's talk of a crisis among a number of Gen Zers. So what is going on? Welcome to a special question time. Let's take our first question, which is from Laurel White.
Should the use of social media be restricted or banned for under-16s?
Well, Katharine, as a head teacher, this is obviously something you will have a keen interest in. What's your view?
Absolutely. Not just social media. I think smartphones should be banned as well. And I know people, some people think, oh my goodness, well, that's too much. But, you know, we ban all sorts of things from children, alcohol, sex, cigarettes, driving, getting married. There's so much. And that's because children need to be protected and looked after. And we teachers and parents need to do our duty. And I think the government needs to help us. And I think too often what's said is, oh, but it'll be fine. Schools have banned phones, or parents should parent. It makes me really upset when people say that, because it's often from people who don't have children in 2025, and they don't know how difficult it is for parents to be able to keep their children offline, and they need support from the government. And I've been campaigning it for years, and I'm still campaigning. We should ban phones and social media for under-16s.
And in terms of the use of social media and what you see in your school, you've talked, haven't you, about the difference you've observed between the top set and the bottom set in your school?
Yes, well, I do know. So the fact is that their frontal cortex, you know, our frontal cortex is able to help us plan for the future and lay out the thousands of steps and make abstract goals into concrete steps to get there. And you know, there are studies that are done on this. That demonstrate that children really are breaking their brains. Their brains are not fully developed. And if they're online, not just social media, but video games over and over again, where the world online now reduces children's ability to choose. And
what difference do you notice that between kids who do use those things and who don't in your school?
So we strongly encourage our families not to give their children smartphones. And I have seen over the years the children who rise from the bottom set up to the top set are the ones without the phones. Not always, but that is often the case. And the ones who come down are far more often on their phones. And I can see it. This is anecdotally, obviously, but I see the damage that they're doing to their little brains. And I haven't even got on to the mental health issues, the dangers that are online, the thousands and thousands of reported grooming cases. It's just, and the children who attempt, online, challenges, who then sadly have died as a result. It's just so upsetting and such an easy thing for us to protect them from.
So, Tom, I mean, you have made your career, your fortune, through being online and through kids watching you on social media. I mean, 50 million followers. You've got Katharine here saying social media for under-16s, ban it.
Yeah.
What's your view?
I mean, yeah, I think there's like a ton of negatives, and I think it really affects people's mental health. I think, I guess overall, I don't think it should be banned now. I think it's more about what's on the social media and what the problems are. 5 years ago, when I was 16, like there wasn't short form content where things are just delivered to you from a swiping algorithm, before you'd sort of like quite proactively click stuff. And that's been the rise of so many people like Andrew Tate and that who've got through that. I also think taking it away now would be really detrimental because, so many people find their community and their sense of belonging through social media and messaging. And I know I didn't fit in the most in school, and being able to find these other people with niche interests like me was really helpful. And I think now taking that away would be really harmful.
And what about in terms of the impact on people's mental health? Because there are studies that suggest it's very detrimental to kids' mental health. There's other studies that are not quite so clear on that. But what's your view on that? Yeah,
I think it's definitely bad, yeah. Sorry, I'm a bit formal. But I think Well,
it's just interesting you say that, given obviously you spend so much of your time on social media.
Yeah, well, it's not good, is it? Do you know what I mean? It's not like... I think surface level, it's... I think there's that sort of comparison culture of seeing what everyone else is like all the time, and that's bad. And you can be fed stuff that isn't good. But I think it's easy as a blanket statement to go, this thing is bad, let's ban that. And I think most kids now will go, don't take it away from me, and they wouldn't be able to vocalise what the good parts are. And those parts that are good are really good. The community and the sense of belonging that I mentioned. So yeah, I think it's a real difficult scenario.
All right, let's see what people think. Yes, man in the back, in the check shirt.
I can ban myself from gambling. Why can't I ban myself from short-form, addictive social media content?
What do you...
I find it highly addictive. I want to be able to ban myself from YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, Snapchat.
What, do you want someone to ban it for you?
I want to ban myself forever. But I can't turn it off, and it's highly addictive.
OK, all right. What about the person at the back there with the... You've got glasses and a colourful shirt on, yeah.
I am a teacher with ADHD, and I think I have noticed how it's affected me and the children. The emotional regulation skills of these children is so poor because they're not having face-to-face interaction. If they were off the internet, they would find each other in real life, and then they would develop the emotional skills that they need to be on social media in the first place. They need to have a period without it first before they get onto it.
So would you want the government to ban social media for under-16s?
Yeah.
I mean, there are countries that are... Australia is going that way, is going to bring that in November.
Yeah.
And there are other countries that are looking at it and talking about it, but obviously not ours at the moment. Yes, there's a man there in the blue shirt, yeah.
So it'd be interesting to hear from the Secretary of State, given that we've seen documented evidence of harm to children, real-world harm to children, things like suicides, things like bullying, etc., whether we can hold social media companies to account in a kind of more robust way than we currently do. And obviously legislation has had to change at a pace as social media has evolved. I was just wondering if we could hear what's going to happen in that space.
So just to be clear, are you in favour of more regulation or banning it altogether?
Well, I think at this point I would say more regulation would be a step towards a ban. I think banning it at the moment might be a bit of a step too far and is also very difficult to enforce. But regulation might be a sweet spot in the middle.
All right, I'm going to come to you in a moment on that, Peter. Yes, man in the black T-shirt in the middle of the audience towards the back.
I think we shouldn't ban it altogether. I think there should be, I agree with the gentleman here, there should be better regulation. A lot of youngsters look at social media to see news, like I did when I was younger. So I think there should be better regulation and a step maybe in the future to ban it, but I don't think there should be a ban altogether. The government should be looking at ways of what 16-year-olds actually look at and what they watch. I mean, the government's thinking of giving the vote to 16-year-olds, or that's, I mean, they're always doom scrolling and they're always on social media. What are they going to vote on at the end of the day? It doesn't really add up.
So you don't think they should get the vote?
I don't think so, no.
OK, let's take one more question here, one more point here.
There's a lot of talk about regulating what's on social media, but is there something about social media companies having almost an ethical responsibility to moderate content? And should the regulation focus on that?
Come on, Peter, right, you're up.
Okay.
So look, there's a couple of things. A, regulation, but also you've got Katharine here saying help head teachers, and the teacher at the back, help head teachers by banning phones, either banning phones in school or banning social media for under 16s. Don't leave it to them. It's too hard. They need backup.
OK, let me try and zip through as quickly as I can because there's been a lot of comments. Firstly,
Well, just deal with those two in particular.
OK, somebody made a point about suicide forums. Just to say that the law came in January where illegal content must be taken down from any platform, including social media. So suicide platforms which have led to the death of children are now no longer available in this country. One of them, the biggest forum in the world, is now voluntarily withdrawn from Britain. Put a statement out, incidentally, saying that, you know, I was anti-free speech as a result. Well, farewell to them. It's great that they're out of our country now. We are tightening our grip on illegal content. When it comes to the online behaviour, and this is a big area, the question was, should we limit or ban? I believe we should be very assertively limiting and then moving to the point where we are incentivising healthy online behaviour. That means understanding what a healthy online life means for childhood. What does a healthy childhood look like online?
But how does that work when the incentive for the tech companies is to create addiction? I mean, is to foster a situation where you want to look more and more and more.
And this is where I'm willing to use the power that I have as Secretary of State for regulation and legislation. There is very clearly addictive behaviour. I think we can tackle that addictive behaviour. I think there are measures that we can do to try and break the addictive nature. When I say a healthy online life, we talk a lot about what an offline healthy life is for children. We've done it for a long time. But for online activity, I think sleep is very important. I think focus on studying is very important. I think when you see the doom scrolling that's been talked about, I think there are interventions that can be made on a technical level that can break that cycle. And these are all things I'm looking very closely on at the moment, and we'll be making announcements.
How practically do you do that?
Well, we now have the powers to take down illegal content. Next month, in July, every piece of information that goes onto a platform must be age-appropriate from 13 upwards.
No, but you're talking about a healthy life online in terms of limiting the amount of time people spend on it. How are you going to do that?
So we can pass laws for this, we can pass regulations for this, and yes, we are working very closely with the tech companies to understand what the technology is that can be brought to bear for it. Now, look, let me just say...
Very briefly, because I want to bring in the rest of the panel.
OK, so we have to understand that a 17, 18-year-old child who's 17, 18 now was born the year the iPhone was released. They've never known a life without smartphones. So take it away when actually it can be used beneficially. You mentioned drinking, you mentioned smoking. There's no safe way for a 16-year-old child, a 13-year-old child to smoke. There is healthy ways, which we've just heard about, to use this technology. Let's double down on what incentivises the health, and let's protect children from the unhealthy behaviour. But trying to
you've made that point. Jack, you're looking very sceptical.
Well, I think there's a crisis happening, and I don't think you solve a crisis with a small sticking plaster. I think we've got to do something radical. The worst statistic I heard about this is the NHS statistics, which says in the last 10 years, the incidence of accidents happening outside have dropped by 70% amongst teenagers. At the same time, the incidences of self-harm have risen by 93%. Our kids are really, really in trouble. And I don't think the answer to that is by doing little things. I think we need to do something quite big because we need to protect them from that. And you say about kids having smartphones in their lives. My kid's 9. He doesn't really understand what a smartphone is yet. And we've got an opportunity so that when he gets to school, when he gets to secondary school, he doesn't feel like it has to be a part of his life. Schools banning smartphones, there's 13% of schools have banned smartphones. That's a tiny percentage. And parents having the responsibility to be in control of smartphones is pretty hard. When my kid is 11, I have made a commitment. I've signed the Smartphone Free Childhood Parent Pact, and I've made the commitment that my kid is not going to have a smartphone until he's 14 years old. But when he is in that class at 11 and suddenly 90% of his class have smartphones, keeping him away from one is going to be really difficult. I think the government needs to help because these kids are in crisis and they need your help.
And Katharine, after you're nodding your head at that.
You cannot win against TikTok. When I think about poor Ellen Room, whose poor boy at 14, she thinks he did some kind of challenge off TikTok. He is now dead. She can't win against TikTok. She just wants to know what her son was doing online, and she can't even find out that information now that he's dead. We have people in the audience saying, I'm so addicted. All of these, Snapchat, Instagram, all of them employ addiction teams of people who are making everything in such a way so that people are so addicted they can't put it down. And those are adults, let alone children, whose brains have not properly developed yet. No head teacher in the land is worried about bottles of vodka coming into his or her school. And the reason is because vodka for children is illegal. So we don't have to look in their bags looking for vodka. But I can tell you, every head teacher in the country is struggling with smartphones in their schools. Even the strictest headmistress in Britain is telling you that our children are suffering and we all need your help in government to do something about it.
Jerry, I'm going to come to you. I just want a few more points from our audience. Yes, well, young woman in the black top.
There's a lot of talk about policy and sort of making laws and legislation around it, but I want to know how often you consider what the young people believe about it. So
tell us what you believe about it.
So I'm 17. I'm not going to say I've got the greatest relationship with social media, but I'm certainly not as addicted to it as older generations might like to portray us as addicted to our phones, or, we're constantly on it. I just think no one ever involves what teenagers think in those conversations. And where do you draw the line between someone who's 15, not equipped to deal with social media, to 16, who is equipped to deal with social media? It's my same thought about the things we ban at 18. So why am I at 17 not able to deal with alcohol the same way I wouldn't be able to deal at 18? All that's going to change is one day. So how do we...
on that basis, you'd never have a dividing line anywhere, though.
But it's how do we actually consider policy that would work without it? It's not going to work if the young people feel like you are actively against them and no one ever considers their opinion.
And is that how it feels to you? And you want to come in?
Yeah, I really understand what you guys are saying, and I think there's tons of negative things to it. And I do think something radical needs to happen because social media's so quickly changing. There wasn't a TikTok or all this other new, really quite dangerous stuff. Even a few years ago, it wasn't prevalent. But I think right now, to just go, we're going to take it away from people, would, as a massive user of social media now, but especially when I was a bit younger and lived up in Nottingham and wasn't around all my friends that I am now, I think that would do a lot more harm than good right now, and it'd be a real steep curve before it started getting better. And I think that something needs to happen, but I don't think a blanket, we're going to ban it for everyone always of this age would be good. And I think something in collaboration with young people where they can go, look, this messaging bit's really important to us. This bit on TikTok, this isn't. This is just a bit of, scrolling. This isn't, as helpful. I think if you're talking about those differences between alcohol, if we're sort of using that as a comparison that's came up, at least from my point of view, there's a difference between a bottle of cider and a whole bottle of vodka, do you know what I mean? Because one's quite a lot more dangerous and can get you a lot more drunk. And I think that the way adults talk about social media right now is just the word alcohol. And it's no, there's quite a lot of facets to this, and it's a really nuanced discussion and one that's really concerning. But I think that it can be quite scary for young people to just hear these statements like, we're going to ban it. And it's like, you know.
I can say very
So,
quickly,
let me just bring David in there, because David, you're nodding along to that as well.
Yeah, look, I think there are actually two different issues here. There's Katharine trying to run her school, and I do think that we should keep mobile phones out of school. That is an environment where kids should not be distracted by their
And you're agreeing with
mobile
that, Tom,
phones,
as well.
and
Yeah,
they
right.
need to be able to learn. But I agree with you. I think going for some kind of ban across the entire country for any engagement with social media for young people, I can't even see how you could make that operate. What you can do is have much...
Well, you operate it with age verification.
Well,
I mean, Australia
yeah.
is going to go down that route, and we've yet to see how that will turn
Yes,
out. But that's what they're saying.
We have yet to see. What we have, and I thought that, if I may say so, the lady in the front row there, her question about the companies was key. And the previous government passed the Online Safety Act, which Peter is now energetically implementing, which absolutely gives Ofcom much greater powers over the companies, including powers of very substantial fines, up to 10% of their revenues. And I know it is painfully slow, but gradually the powers are being used to do, as Peter said, things like stopping all the stuff on suicide. And now they are at last beginning to have to take a bit more editorial type responsibility for the stuff they put out over their different social media. So I think protecting the school environment, tightening up the regulation on the content, but not an overall ban.
OK, so on this panel, there is a consensus about banning mobile phones in schools. Can I just see a show of hands? Who in the audience thinks mobile phones should be banned in schools? So that's most people. Why don't you do it?
Because 97% of schools don't allow use of phones in school already.
But hang on a second. But, but plenty of those schools still struggle with it, and people still bring in their phones. They spend a lot of their time saying to kids, get your phone back in your pocket, or it's not quite as straightforward as they don't exist.
Do not allow use of smartphones there. Now, look, phones are a fact of life. Parents like to be able to sort of track some kids, see where they are. They like to be able to be in touch with their kids on the way to school, on the way home from school. Kids use travel cards that are now on smart cards in their wallets. They use gym cards to get in that are in their digital wallets. So smartphones are part of life now as young people and as adults.
OK, but just in terms of mobile phones in schools specifically...
There is no place for smartphones in schools. They should not be used.
So, OK, so if 97%...
each individual school as to how they police that and whether they use lockers on the way in or pouches. OK. That is up to them.
All right.
But there is no place, let me be clear. And then...
But then why not just... I mean, you've got Katharine saying... Katharine, you're desperately coming, but just one second.
Well, because it is the guidance. What you're saying is, do we pass a law? Do we go to all of the trouble of passing a law?
Why do you think there should be one, Katharine?
Because it is the case that, in theory, they're banned. Talk to the teachers. They'll tell you that the phones are coming out. The phones, they have... all altercations start on the phones. Now, look, there will be some schools that have actually managed to keep phones entirely out of their schools, but they will be in the minority. I promise you. Yes, it seems that 97% have banned, but just ask the teachers in the classrooms. They will tell you that the phones are a massive problem.
OK, so what we're talking is, it is government policy that you do not have smartphones in schools. What you're saying is pass a law. So who do we send to prison and fine? Who do you want me to pass a law to fine?
Well, you can
the parent
fine us
or the
head
teacher?
teachers.
Sent to prison,
you
a prison
can fine
sentence?
me, no. But
hang on, Peter. In fairness, it's against the law for a 15-year-old to drink a bottle of vodka. If a 15-year-old takes a bottle of vodka into school, no one is going to get sent to prison.
And the person who sells it commits a criminal offence that could result in prison.
Sure, but the 15-year-old is not going to get sent to
prison. But what laws do is they change culture. And then once the law is there, then the culture changes. When the parents are saying, oh, my goodness, I don't know, my child is going on a hunger strike, my child is moving out because I'm saying he can't have a phone because of the fear of missing out, and everybody's on a phone, and I don't know what to do. The only safe social media, the only safe use of the online world is supervised online world. And the unsupervised online world is such a danger to children. It is our duty and responsibility as adults to look after them. And it's the duty of government to help us adults. And I understand those of us, we say, well, you know, we should just look after it. Head teachers should, parents should. And of course we have a responsibility. But the fact is, if you were to bring out some kind of law, and I'm not saying it's easy, and I imagine it's very hard, the idea of standing up to these massive
it's not hard
companies.
to stand up to them. It's
okay, well then do it.
It's not.
Okay.
But what you do is do what gets it right. You've heard from young people. The NSPCC policy on this is exactly as Tom has described. Young people have said consistently, and the ones that I've met, and it is many, many I've met to speak to this, with informal groups to try and gauge their opinion. I didn't meet any that want it removed from their lives, but I meet many who want help managing it.
Well, we were just talking about schools
parents
specifically.
these days have a lived experience of parenting because they were parented in the off-time, in the offline world. But there is no parent who's had experience of being parented
All right,
in the
I get
online
that.
world.
Just in that particular instance,
help with the
we
addictive
were just
behaviour and
talking about
curfews
schools.
and sleep patterns, so that parents aren't constantly ripping phones out of children's hands. This is something that we can help with to try and move towards.
All right, you've made that point.
Online.
You've made that point. I'm going to move on because there are 3 topics I want to get through, and I want to give each one equal time. We obviously could talk all evening about this, but I'm going to take another question from Cam Dalewal. Oh, there you are.
What does healthy masculinity look like today, and how do we guide our sons towards it?
Right, well, the obvious person to come to you first on this is you, Jack, obviously, as the co-author of Adolescence, watched by I don't know how many people all around the world. What does healthy masculinity look like? How do we guide our sons towards it?
Well, I don't know, and it's you know, and Adolescence wasn't trying to make comment on masculinity as a whole. We were trying to make comment on one kid and trying to tell the story of that one kid. So I'm not any sort of specialist in what masculinity can look like.
Sure, but what you were saying with that, surely, I think what people took from it was not that one kid is an anomaly and there is no other kid in that situation.
No.
I think you were trying to say this is something that is a common experience amongst a number of young...
It's not a common experience, it's a troubling experience among some men, some young men, and it is a really worrying experience. And incel culture and the manosphere are terrifying things that are coming for our young men, and they want to involve them in it. In terms of what healthy masculinity looks like, you know, I get questioned as my own masculinity all the time because of the show I made, because I don't look like a certain type of man, and that worries me. Not that...
What do you mean? What do they say?
Well, if you looked at the comments in terms of when I was announced for this panel tonight, there was about 30 or 40 questioning the way I look and the sort of person I am, and whether I'm a soy beard twat, I think was one of the things that was said about me. I think the really troubling thing, and the thing that I found talking to young people, is that pressure to look and behave in a certain way. And I do think that's something that I didn't experience growing up. You know, my hero growing up was Jarvis Cocker, a skinny weirdo, and I was able to play to that skinny weirdo within me. And there's a lot of people that say, I need to get to the gym, I need to get fit, I need to look a certain way, because that is the only way I'm going to live a normal life. And that threat of abnormality is a huge threat. And I do think we need to be helping boys through that, because it's a difficult age for them. And this particular crisis that I do believe we're in terms of social media is only exacerbating that.
Tom?
What does healthy masculinity look like? Yeah, I think it's like...
And how do we guide people towards it?
How do we guide? Well, I guess what it looks like is I agree with Jack of it's, you know, kind of not men thinking that they have to be a specific way and fit into these specific things and think, oh, I've got to go to the gym. And yeah.
And are you aware, in terms of social media, I mean, one of the things that people talked about before your series, but also your series highlighted hugely, was misogyny and young men feeling shut out from the world, that it's more biased towards women and towards girls, and that there is an element of society they cannot access unless they behave in a certain way. Is that something you are aware of online?
I'm very aware of it. It's very, like, prevalent. And I think healthy masculinity is the absence of that. You know, it's men being kind and also having esteem in themselves and not needing to put other people down, and that these things can coexist. I think it's, you know, there's these proper, like, predators on the internet who are getting the roles of teachers, you know, and speaking to people like as young as, like below 10, you know what I mean, who maybe aren't growing up with all this information of, here's how you can feel good about yourself. And then you've got these people, you know, the Andrew Tates of the world going, hey, here's how you can be good and girls will like you and do all this stuff and everyone will think you're cool. And it's just this super pressuring, bad environment. And I think anything, you know, that can be put in place to stop that, because that's only came about in the past 2 years and it's been quick. And I think that's the most concerning thing for me. Yeah.
Man here in the front in the jeans and the white shirt. Yeah.
I was a little disappointed with your answer, Jack. I want to ask why you feel like you can't define healthy masculinity so easily. I mean, we're very quick to talk about bad male influences on the world. As soon as you say something's bad to a teenager, they want to look at it. So why do we not promote and talk more about what healthy masculinity looks like and promote the role models in our society that exhibit those behaviours more?
And who do you think should be doing that?
Men like yourselves, politicians, those in power, not talking down about the people we shouldn't be talking about in the first place, and actually promoting those who do exhibit the behaviours and who we want our young children to.
Highlighting the positive.
Exactly.
And the woman next to you?
Yeah, I think men need men who are healthy. And I think in as much as societies are made up of communities, made up of families, I think in as much work needs to go into young people, is as much work needs to go into teenagers and men in general. I think the home is where all of these things kind of stem from. And if we work towards creating an environment in the home where there is healthy views on masculinity, or even third spaces if the home is not healthy, where there are positive views on masculinity, then certain things coming from outside sources like social media will have less of a chance to land and take root.
And do you think is it something that troubles you as an issue, or do you think in any sense it's overplayed, perhaps?
No, I definitely think it's an issue. I think in any space you're going to have people that are kind of struggling with that or dealing with that, and oftentimes it's kind of in the small things that you may see it show up. So I definitely think it still needs to be addressed.
Okay, a man there in the brown shirt, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm an actor facilitator and I work for companies where we go into schools working with young people about masculinity, healthy relationships. But the previous government and this government keep making cuts to art, so that's stopping that work and making it difficult. And the same goes for the Arts Council budget being reduced by 30%. It stops working class writers who want to share these stories, who gets people behind them, like Adolescents, from doing that. So we need more investment in the arts, preventative and education.
Okay, woman here.
I think I really agree with kind of the points that have just been raised. But I think kind of at the end of the day, like, it is men that are almost doing this to other men. Like, the whole topic around toxic masculinity is like other men putting men down, because I don't think that's coming from women. And I think at the end of the day, like, it is started because we let misogyny slide, we let sexism slide, and like, men aren't calling out other men when they see this behaviour, especially at a young age. Like, I've grown up in this generation, like, you can see it all the time, and if you let one thing slide, then like kind of this is what results out of it, I feel.
Katharine, in your experience at school?
Well, at our school, we teach fundamentals in terms of values. So kindness, gratitude, self-sacrifice. You sacrifice something that might be important to you for the betterment of the whole. Looking after those who are weaker than you, respecting those who are older than you. And we actively promote these, I call them small c conservative values, you could call them traditional values. But they need to be actively promoted, especially in the day and age of social media, where children are accessing a very different world when they go home, which is teaching them something quite different. And I think you find, I mean, certainly I have found that when you promote these sorts of values, children do actually love them and embrace them, and then change their behaviours accordingly. And so whatever the issue we're talking about, whether it's toxic masculinity or this 80-20 rule, for instance, that appears in Adolescence.
Can we just explain that for those who are not aware of it? So it's the idea that 80% of women fancy only 20% of men.
And this is, you know, an upsetting thing for the protagonist in Adolescence. And they access this sort of stuff online. So we have to work very hard. I think we have to work harder as adults, both in the home, but then also at school. And it takes a village to raise a child. All of us adults have to work very hard at embracing the kind of traditional values that we all sort of know are the right values. It's just that we assume that children will have them, and they won't have them unless we teach them those and narrate them regularly and build habits in them over time, so that as they grow up, they become the kinds of people who live and breathe those values. And if we did that across the board, I think we would see a massive reduction of these issues like toxic masculinity that we're discussing.
So I think it's like really good to teach kids, you know, be kind and all this stuff. But I think in this day and age, like right now, it's calling for something a little more specific than that. Like, that's obviously as a blanket would be really good, but like, as you're saying now, like, I want to know, and especially, you know, not long since I was in school, I didn't have the tools to, in a big friendship group, spot someone being sexist, call them out, you know, communicate with them in a way that's not gonna, you know, be really difficult for me. And also all this stuff online is promoting homophobia, transphobia, all this stuff. It would be really helpful, I think, and necessary if schools could teach kids, here's what you do if someone is being sexist, here's what you do if you think someone's treating a woman this way. Because I agree, like, it is mainly men on men. I think it is, I don't know, but like...
Let me ask, because I didn't know what topics we were going to discuss tonight specifically, and I wasn't sure if this would come up, but so many of you asked about this subject that we decided to do it. Is there anyone here who feels, yes, there is toxic masculinity, but men and boys are getting a bit of a bad rap, and we're kind of all getting... Yes, let's speak to the man here in the shirt and tie, yes.
I think for the last few years we've seen a gap in educational attainment amongst boys and girls, and has been for some time. And that's also the case in graduate earnings as well. So young boys are told that they are worse off, and yet their lived experience can sometimes feel like actually that isn't the case. And so there's a sort of blanket, almost slogan of toxic masculinity, which doesn't reflect every boy and every young man as well.
And yes, and then here in the check shirt, you wanted to say something.
I think the problem is that most men don't have many role models. When I was at school, for example, I was taught about Henry VIII. On the other hand, I'm talking about Florence Nightingale. So I think there need to be a more balance of more masculine role models for us to look up to.
Okay, a woman next to you.
I think it's clear that it's not everybody. You know, it's not all the boys, they're terrible. You know,
sure,
all the
and
boys
no one is saying that.
Obviously, nobody is saying that. But I think it's just about calling it out when we see it, and I think we can start doing that from young. We need to go into the primary schools because it really starts from there. It starts from something as small as, you know, you're playing in a playground and the boy is telling the girl that she can't play football with them. Something like that, it starts there and it's not checked and it continues, and then before you know, you get to secondary school, you get to sixth form, and, you know, nobody's really, you know, checking that from young. I think we really need to just get in and be a support unit for young boys, because I think that's what we need to do. Show them that we care, show them that it's okay to be emotional, it's okay to, you know, it's okay to not be okay, and then try and fix it from there. Because like a lot of people have mentioned, it's going to become a vicious cycle where it's men who have learned something from men, and then, you know, boys who learn something from men, and then they grow up, they do the same thing,
and perpetuate it.
Vicious cycle. When are we going to break it?
Dave?
I think it's striking, isn't it, how as soon as we talk about masculinity, we're talking about a range of bad things that we want somehow to tackle. And what we're finding it very hard to do is offer a positive account of masculinity. And the reason for that is we're very wary of saying anything that doesn't also apply to women. So you can have a list of virtues and strengths and responsible behaviour, but what is very difficult now is saying something distinctive about men that isn't just tackling a problem in men. Historically, and the world is changing, historically we'd probably have said breadwinner. And I do think there's some economics and there's some point about their opportunities in life. And as the breadwinner role shrinks and female earnings rightly catch up with male earnings, not fully happened, but that's where it's going. So I think a lot of men have found that the kind of jobs they used to do and the kind of role they had, the manufacturing employment, the physical work, often that's where the job losses are. And the female employment, and these are gender stereotypes, but they do kind of exist. The nurses, the teachers, those are respected occupations just as they were 50 years ago. And I thought the gentleman's point about education was absolutely right. What we can do to help boys is provide them with much better routes to the kind of jobs that they want to do and the kind of skills they need to do them, so they think they can be useful members of society and contribute their incomes, quite possibly to raising a family. That is a basic thing that they used to be able to do in a much more exclusively male way, and they should still be able to do in a much more equal society. And with that, I think, alongside all the social media...
I was going to say, because Tom is grimacing at this. Why are you grimacing at this, Tom?
I don't think it is just social media. I think there's some underlying economic stuff. There's the number of young people who are not in education, employment and training, and it's about 1 million of them.
Well, nearly 2/3 of those are male.
Yeah, and the number for the women who are in those circumstances, it was often driven by... early motherhood, having kids when they were young, that's going down, whereas the men are finding more and more difficult. They're the ones where the mental issues are most acute. They're the ones who don't find a route into the jobs market.
So, Tom, why are you grimacing at that?
What? I don't think the problem is men don't know what job they want. I think a lot of this stuff with social media we're talking about as well is... it isn't that... Social media is propelling all of these issues that have already existed in our society right now, like sexism and misogyny and all this stuff. You know, like, it's obvious what men should... They need to be kind and need to have good self-esteem and meet their needs, you know, as any person should be. It don't matter what gender you are.
Exactly.
What's important, I think, and I guess, like, it's good to have male role models. Well, it's brilliant. But, like, what we need to do, what's calling for right now is to highlight the stuff that's bad. Because there's a lot of bad, you know, there's good stuff all about, but it's like, this is shown up, and this needs to be like, hey, kids, don't listen to this, because this is, you know, like a drug that's, you know, going to help your esteem, and it's not that.
Yeah, but they're also just losing out. I mean, the virtues which you described rightly are both for men and women. That's right. But when you look at what's happening, we're talking about there are young men who are finding navigating the route to fulfilling their aim of the kind of job they want is much harder. And it's clearly harder than it is for women. There's something in our education and training system.
They find it harder,
yeah,
not that it is.
Well, I think the roots for them are to. And you know, in my experience, you know, they talk about they want to be a chef, or they want to be an engineer, or they want to be a fireman. But actually getting there from where you are as a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old in a school like an adolescent, they just find that route very difficult, and it should be more straightforward and more accessible to them.
I mean, obviously there'll be girls who will feel the same at 14, of jobs they want to do and they don't quite know how to get there. But, Peter, what does healthy masculinity look like? How can we guide our sons towards it?
It shows how difficult this is for all of us, whether we're policymakers or society at large or educators. Because I agree with every single word that's been said here. And it's not often you watch Question Time and you agree with every single word in one particular debate. But it shows how tough it is. So, to start at the end, where misogyny has been expressed, today a piece of legislation passed through and became law that we've outlawed simulated strangulation in porn. This is one of the drivers that we know with evidence is driving the kind of behaviours which is appalling by men against young women. We have a pledge, a mission, one of the 5 missions of this government is to halve violence against women and girls, and a strategy is kind of coming out soon, and the measures I put into law today are part of that and will feed into it. But to come back to the strict question that I've been asked, I was really lucky because I did have a great role model in my life, a male role model, and that's my dad. And he died last year and was right up to the day he died a great, wise, guiding, firm hand for me. Right the way through life, but many people don't have that. For young people, young boys, men growing up now, we have many characteristics. I'm a gay man. These are 2 of my characteristics, and I've been lucky enough to have gone through life being able to understand all the different characteristics I have as a human being. I'm also a profound dyslexic, and one of the benefits that came from that for me was learning to overcome it help me understand many of the other characteristics I have. The problem we have at the moment is that with social media and with people exploiting young boys' vulnerabilities, they are focusing on one characteristic, which is the insecurity that comes with adolescence and the really challenging period of being a boy going through puberty and all of the insecurities that go with it. They are able to exacerbate one particular characteristic. The challenge we have as a society is to mitigate the harms that we see, but to try and encourage young people to see themselves in the round. And only then can we start seeing their full potential, the benefits, and also some of the joys of being a man and growing up into a man, as well as all of the challenges that go with it.
I'm going to take one more question. Before I do, I want to tell you where we are next week. It's our last programme before we take a break for the summer. We will be in St Andrews. So if you live in or around the Fife area, you want to come along and be part of the audience of Question Time, go to the Question Time website and apply. Normal service will be resumed. We'll be talking about whatever the issues are of the day. But for now, we're sticking with our topic. So let's take a question now from Matt. Matt, why brew?
Hi. How should we balance AI with protecting future jobs and ensuring today's children have meaningful employment tomorrow?
Loads of you asked about this. So we've got some interesting things that have happened. The CEO of Microsoft, for example, 30% of coding in Microsoft is now written by AI. We've got the Amazon boss saying the workforce will shrink, in terms of white-collar jobs in particular, because of AI in the next few years. David?
Yeah, and oddly enough, by some extraordinary irony, one of the first areas where AI is displacing jobs is absolutely in software. And there will undoubtedly be a range of activities where the AI takes over or takes a much more significant role. However, I'm fundamentally an optimist because there are lots of people doing jobs today that nobody even forecast would exist 30 or 40 years ago. And we worried about the coal mines closing and the miners losing their jobs, and we worried about jobs disappearing. But in reality, new jobs arrive because human appetites and human needs and human imagination is unlimited. There's always new things to do. So I think
the unemployment rate in the UK has risen to its highest level for 4 years.
Yeah, but...
And there's much talk about graduate unemployment at the moment.
Well, graduate employment is very high and higher than amongst non-graduates. And the earnings of some non-graduates are catching up with graduates because of the minimum wage and boosting the incomes of people in very low pay, which is the right thing to do. There will be painful adjustments. Some of the jobs that people thought they could have, a legal assistant, reading documents, all those type of things will go for AI. But although it's very hard to predict, I think we will find that new jobs emerge in their place. And I hope some of the skills and some of the classic things we learn in our schools and the discipline of being taught the maths and the English will actually stand people in good stead as these new and different types of jobs emerge.
Now, I'm going to come to the rest of you, of course, but because so many of you asked about this, I just want to hear a bit from our audience. Yes, the man in the green T-shirt there.
Hi, yeah. So I think we've heard there, very interesting, as we transition towards there's going to be new jobs that are created. One of those areas clearly is going to be the transition to net zero that we have, and there's huge opportunities in that. And one of the questions I've got is why is there so much government policy and a focus on trying to dislodge existing supply chains for things like wind energy when we're not investing as much as potentially we could be in nurturing our homegrown technologies like tidal stream energy?
Listen, that's a really good question. I'm going to stick with AI, if you don't mind, just for the moment. Yes, man here in the front.
So I'm a recent graduate, and I'm getting a lot of careers advice at the moment. And a lot we're getting is to use AI to help with our applications, and also our applications are getting screened and sorted by AI. Are we not concerned this isn't matching the best people with the best jobs?
Yes, and the man here in the T-shirt in the front, you had your hand up.
I believe there was a recent report put out this week by MIT that talks about the use of AI and what it does to people's brains, and it came out that there was something called a cognitive deficit. So I think the use of AI needs to be explored where people are using it mindlessly and there's not an outcome of productivity that comes from it. So I think something needs to be talked about and focused on how can we use AI to even get better job prospects, or are they coming out of academic careers with those key skills? Because I know a few postgraduate researchers that they're marking papers, but they can clearly see AI is being used, the bibliography is non-existent. So what's happening there with people using AI, and what's happening with the young students? I don't know how it's like in secondary schools as well, but what's it like with those people using AI as well?
Okay. So, Tom, let me just come to you, because, I mean, the question is about AI and about protecting future jobs. You've obviously had a very unusual career path.
Yeah.
So, if I'm right, so you were taking your GCSEs during COVID, so in fact you didn't end up sitting them as no one did then. You did mocks, effectively. And then what happened? Did you then carry on in your educational career, or you just...
Yeah, I did a year of college of film and TV, studying a BTEC, and then I stopped.
And then what, because you were getting so much traction online?
I was doing all right, yes, I thought. Oh. The guy at college was like...
Like Bill Gates dropping out from Harvard.
The guy at college was like, we're teaching you to do what you're doing, so go do it. I was like, all right. But just on AI, I think, I know this is quite easy to say, but I think it's probably really quite bad in quite a blanket way. And I don't know tons about it. But you know how we're talking about social media right now? Like, man, if we'd have known 15 years ago that it's going to turn into this thing right now, we would have nipped it in the bud right away.
But people talk about lots of positive things about AI in terms of medical diagnoses.
Oh, really?
Well, I mean...
Oh, I actually don't.
That kind of thing.
But do you know the things that we're concerned about with AI? For me, I'm like, we should probably get on this now, because it's probably going to get quite a lot more intense and worse.
Yeah, but the people who... someone said, you won't lose your job to AI, you'll lose your job to someone who's better at using the AI than you are. So the thing is to find smart ways in which these extra capacities can be deployed.
That does depend on the job. I work in the creative industries. Creative industries are worth 5% of the UK's total income. And the creative industries are really under threat from AI. And the reason why creative industries are under threat from AI is because of copyright. And the harvesting of people's copyright, these people here, I'm aware that I'm the second youngest member of this panel that's about young people. You guys are going to be in a situation where you're piloting your careers through all this stuff, and your creativity, your originality might be the thing that saves you, that you might end up being part of this fast-growing industry, and that means protecting your copyright, protecting your ideas becomes ever more vital, and that does require government help.
Well, look, you've got the Secretary of State for AI, yeah?
Yes.
So, and as I understand it, so far you are not giving way to the immense pressure you had from the likes of Jack and Elton John and others saying...
And Baroness Kidron, and, you know, the stuff that came from the Lords.
Are you not convinced by his argument?
Actually, it's the complete polar opposite. I'm not just fighting it. I'm giving them everything that's been asked for, which is a dedicated piece of legislation on it. What I wouldn't do was we can't solve this problem on one amendment on a tangential piece of legislation. So I've already pledged that I will be legislating for copyright so that the future generations can work in an environment where they can use their AI skills to create AI, and they can be creative, and we can have both sectors working together. So I've already started and been working on it today, that piece of legislation. But if I can quickly say, David made an important point. 60% of the jobs that are currently in our economy didn't exist 50 years ago. 50 years ago, if you described some of those jobs to people, they wouldn't have even thought it was jobs. It wouldn't have felt like work to them. That same process is underway again. The difference is it's going to happen much, much faster. The only way we can tackle this is to make sure people have the skills to adapt rapidly in a fast-changing economy. And the skills you need actually are very different. It's not going to be like learning code as it was just 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. Understanding how AI works, understanding the basics and fundamentals of it, and how it can be an assistant to help you learn additional skills and, you know, all sorts of other bits of knowledge to use it for you will mean that you can adapt very, very rapidly in the fast-changing economy. Now, if we get this right, our country will remain at the forefront of the global economy. If we get it wrong, we will be subject to AI and how it interacts with the world. Okay. We have agency, we are the government, and we're using that agency for everyone here.
Man towards the back in the blue shirt, further back. Yes, keep your hand up so we can find you. There you go.
We talk about using AI to our advantage, but in schools we're not really taught how to utilise this technology. Neither are we in universities. Sometimes you're told not to use it. So with job applications now being screened using it, how would you say students should go about utilising it to their advantage?
10 seconds.
Now I'm going to ask Katharine, because she's a teacher. Katharine?
Well, you have to ask what the purpose of school is. And I think school is meant to equip us with knowledge and skills and values that will stand the test of time and will take you through anything. And I refer back to the values, the traditional values I was talking about in helping children find out who they are and build their self-esteem and know that they can go out in the world and do something. I spoke about the damage to the frontal cortex that the internet is doing to our children, and them not being able to build the skills of seeing themselves in the future and having abstract goals that they can then take concrete steps towards. The English and the maths, the Shakespeare, the algebra that you learned at school, and people think, oh, well, actually, was there any point because I'm not able to use it to get a job? I think we underestimate just how much those traditional subjects that are taught in school help us become who we are and can transcend time. So it's not just about getting a job, but it's about who you become as a human being and how you can then contribute to society, being that kind of person. And that is something that I think we lose when I was talking about those values. It's just so important that we get that we want to create a situation rather than thinking when it comes to the sexism or whatever the issue is, let's stop that, let's stop that. Actually, what we need to do is create an environment where all of that stuff is far less likely to happen in the first place.
Young woman in the white shirt towards the middle of the audience. If you keep your hand up, then we'll find you, yes.
So I think the problem with like so-called generative AI is that it's not actually creating anything. All of this stuff already exists in the world, and all you're doing is regurgitating somebody's opinion. So I fail to see why we should place so much faith and trust in the opinion of a machine, these algorithms, which are known to push specific agendas and
does it worry you in terms of,
thought.
can I ask you, does it worry you in terms of job prospects? Because I got a lot of questions from the audience about that.
I think it shows a fundamental unwillingness to believe in young people and to trust in their abilities to do things, in the sense of, if we are screening job applications using AI, then you don't trust your HR staff. You don't invest in these skills which help people make good recruitment decisions.
I mean, they may say it's a lot cheaper to do it that way, which I think probably is why they are doing it. Yes, the woman here with the glasses, further back, one line further back, in the black T-shirt. In the black T-shirt, there you go.
I think it's really concerning because we're not just talking about people using it to help them. I'm at university currently, and people are writing dissertations with AI, and it's not getting caught. I've had issues with group members using it, and it's a whole thing that no one knows how to deal with. So I think there really needs to be some advice on what you do. Some universities are, but I'm doing a high-skilled degree in engineering, and I'm concerned that my job's at risk. So it is begging the question also, is university as worth it as it used to be with the massive debt that you get from it? So.
Right. Listen, I'm afraid we are out of time, but I know David would say, yes, it is. Because I know you feel, and so would Peter. So would Peter. But thank you for your point. Listen, thank you, all of you, for your point. And can I just say, for the panel and the audience, it feels like it's 100 degrees in here. It is so hot. So thank you for bearing with it and keeping up your energy and your enthusiasm for this programme, because it is hot as Hades in here. Anyway, thank you, of course, to you at home watching. For this special question time, we've come to the end. Remember, we are in St Andrews next week. But for now, to the panel and the audience, thank you very much. And, of course, thank you to you at home for watching. Bye-bye.